Hi, everyone. Welcome to another interview here for the Primal Trust Academy and Community. My name is Dr. Kathleen King, and I'm the founder of Primal Trust. And today I have a really beautiful special guest, and her name is Cristina Garcia Ventura from Spain. And I have a unique interview today. Typically, we think of these interviews as showcasing the star celebrity recovery stories, and they're there to like, oh, I was once sick and now I'm healed and recovered. And I have found that in some ways, I think that it's important that we highlight those that are in the middle of the process of transformation and healing, and that we bring more of a spotlight to the heroes and heroines that are in the middle of their journey, that are trying to become more of their true self and are still wrestling with the symptoms and wrestling with, the limited lifestyle they might have. And so I decided that I want to start doing a series of interviews for people that are in the process of transformation, that are in the muck, that are in the middle of it, to be able to share stories that are more relatable for those that are also in the muck, rather than like, oh, wow, that person's healed, I don't know if I can do that. And, I just really think that Cristina is going to be a great example to all of you of someone who is choosing transformation despite having a chronic illness. She's in the process. So Cristina joined the Primal Trust Academy and Community about 2 months ago. And immediately, as I was reading her forum post, I was like, this one's different. I need to get to know her. Her responses were coming from a place of a very high conscious perspective, despite having a lot of significant physical challenges. So some of the things that Cristina deals with is chronic fatigue syndrome, dysautonomia, which is where your heart rate might be unstable, digestive issues, shortness of breath, ringing of ears, things like that. So she's, been dealing with this. How long have you been dealing with these things, Cristina?
The chronic illness, CFS, 2.5 years. Okay. But the other, like this autonomia started, I think maybe 7-8 years ago when I was 12.
Okay, so you've had things. So anyway, welcome Cristina to the Primal Trust podcast, whatever I call it. And I'm really grateful that you'd be here. And I just want to mention to the audience that she was a little unsure about being here, right? You want to tell them why? Why are you unsure about being here?
Because I am terrified. Because I told Dr. Kat this, but I'm sorry about my English because I'm Spanish. This is my second language, and I'm really nervous. What was the question again?
Why are you nervous to be here?
Okay, yes, why am I nervous to be here? Really, it's just I am not the stereotype of someone who has healed, or of someone who's already happy and perfect. I'm actually in my day-to-day, I'm actually sometimes in a lot of pain, and I suffer, and I am not healed. I have symptoms. I have chronic fatigue, and I am just not perfect. I am still showing up here, and I'm really nervous about it I'm also very self-conscious. It's the first time I ever do something like this, and yeah, I just hope you guys understand that I'm in the middle of the journey. I'm not at the end. Just take what resonates, and I hope you can accept the fact that I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not being perfect. I'm not healed, but I am here showing up with my imperfections and being super uncomfortable and super scared, very nervous, terrified, and I'm still showing up here for you guys. Yes. And for me. And for you. I wanna tell myself that I can give something to you guys and to the world, even though I'm not healed, even though I'm not perfect, even though I'm still suffering and nervous and terrified and in pain, and I still can give you guys something. That's why it's scary, but I'm still here showing up.
And gives me chills because, and it's so touching to me, because that is what I try to teach in Primal Trust, that you have value to give to the world, even when you're sick, even when you're bedbound, that you have a value and a transmission and a teaching and something special to offer. And that often we think we need to be healed and recovered in order to have something to give back. And that's just not true. And so for those of you listening, listen in to the reality of life, the reality of the healing process. And, you know, I think that Cristina has something to share that is special for all of you. So Cristina was somebody who has done some other programs before Primal Trust. She's done DNRS. She did another program. She's been from doctor to doctor. And something brought you to Primal Trust. Tell us why you ended up here a couple months ago.
Okay. So I started this whole journey, probably like most of you guys. I went to doctors, but when I got the chronic illness, like chronic fatigue, and but I had dysautonomia ever since I was 12, and doctors couldn't help. So I kind of felt like they didn't help. So from the beginning, I didn't have much faith in that route. And so I just decided that I would find my own way by myself. And so the first thing I tried was diet, and it made me worse. It didn't help, especially because I was because at the beginning I was terrified of having a chronic illness. I was really afraid. And as many of you also probably know, in the chronic illness community, there's this, when you first get into it, it's very scary, because there are a lot of people who are like, 99% of the people won't ever heal of chronic illness, and there's no cure for this, and that is really scary, and it's like kind of like doomsday, like your life's over right now. So that actually made my symptoms so much worse. So I was so terrified, and it's really key how this community of people who are in that kind of consciousness of fear, of victim consciousness, and how that affects those of us who just recently out of nowhere started having a chronic illness like me. And then the first thing we find is this community of people who are just really scary, and it kind of just pulls you in, because I had a very strong mentality about all of this, but I still got pulled in by all of this consciousness and fear. And at the beginning, it was just very, very scary. So I did diets out of fear, because I was afraid of the illness, and I wanted it to go away. And then I went into neuroplasticity, because I realized this was deeper than diets. And then I did neuroplasticity programs like DNRS, and I did some brain retraining and things like that. But then I also realized that it was deeper than neuroplasticity, and that when I was actually doing this neuroplasticity thing, this brain retraining thing, I realized that I wasn't really, that I realized that to me, feeling good didn't really matter, because I still had all of these uncomfortable feelings that no matter how much retraining I did, they would still be there. And I had this intuition that no matter how much brain retraining I did, I would never get better with brain retraining. Because I was attempting to feel good with this brain retraining, but at the same time, I knew that deep down I felt horrible, and I had all of these really uncomfortable emotions that I was just pushing deep down, especially because one of the messages that these neuroplasticity programs, it looks like they're telling you that suffering, that the reason you're not healing is because you're suffering. And if you start feeling positive and thinking positive, then you're suddenly going to heal. And then we go on this war against suffering and pain and illness. And that is not really how this whole thing works. And at some point, I guess I just realized that I wanted to, that wasn't going to get me anywhere. And I just decided to go deeper. And I went looking for more spiritual programs, and I did another program that was more spiritual, but I still felt triggered. I still felt like this person had some sort of like fixed personality. I don't know if I have to explain what it is. Fixed personality is when you're really afraid of something, So you're trying to get to a future in which you feel good because you're terrified of this thing that you think it's bad and you want to feel good in the future. No, so you do things out of fear. And I still felt that vibration with a lot of people, like every single person that I ever came across in the chronic illness community, even like mentors, people that had programs, it still gave me that kind of vibration. Even if it was like a very small percentage, I still got triggered. It still triggered the fear in me. And Dr. Kat was the first and only person that I ever felt like this person doesn't trigger the part of me that wants to run away from suffering, run away from my illness, that wants to fix my illness. And that is how I knew she was the one. And at the beginning, I couldn't believe it. But then I thought, oh, this is just a one-time video thing. But then I kept looking at her content, and every single thing it didn't trigger my fear and my fix-it mentality. So that's kind of when I realized, so if I want to go in this path, this is the kind of vibration, the kind of person and the kind of community that I want to be in. The kind of community that doesn't want to fix me, that thinks that I have something to give right now without having to fix myself. Even if I'm ill, even if I suffer, even if I'm in pain, I can still give something right now as I am. I don't have to run away from all of these things that we consider bad and go into a future in which everything's perfect and I'm healed and I feel good. So that's how I here.
I love that. And I love what you've described as the journey of being sick, being scared, and immediately dropping into fix-it consciousness, which many programs are created in that fix-it consciousness. So whether they like it or not, that's the transmission underneath of it all. Like, you need to do this many practices a day in order to heal, For some people, and I will say this, for some people, they go into that rigid program and they do recover it, and it's just a match for them. For some people, their consciousness is like, no, we are wanting something deeper for you, because you're right. What I saw with brain retraining is that for some people, when they just try to do brain retraining alone of elevating their mood, some of them end up suppressing their deeper emotions, and that can happen with certain people. And then what happens is those deeper emotions are still running the autonomic nervous system. Yes, they may have an elevated mood, but there's still some muck in there. And that's probably, sounds like what happened with you.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Yeah. And so that's why in our program, we work on the inner work and we work on somatics, and we're not just using brain retraining as an emotional elevation tool, but rather as a self-discovery tool. So it's a different purpose. And I love that you've highlighted the issue of that fix-it consciousness versus, what would you call the consciousness of primal trust, the community? What's your words?
What would I call it? That's interesting. I don't actually know I can't think of anything right now.
Well, let me ask you this. What are you being inspired to do rather than fix yourself?
Okay. Yeah, that is also really important, I think. Because I think at some point I kind of got out of this fix-it this fix-it personality, and I just wanted to say that the fix-it, it goes a lot deeper than chronic illness, because I know we're in chronic illness community, but before I had the illness, I wanted to, like, the deeper layer of this was wanting to fix the things that I considered bad, like suffering, pain. I used to have depression, wanting to fix my depression, wanting to fix the uncomfortable feelings that I have, which are part of the human experience. And I think that is really the deeper layer of the fix-it mentality and all of that. And once I stopped this fix-it thing, I kind of I realized that I didn't just have to stop fighting against everything in my life that I consider bad. I didn't have to it wasn't enough to stop fighting against my problems. I also had to fight for something. And that was kind of like the tricky part, because what do I fight for? Like, what can I give? And I think it was really important for me to understand, after I got out of that fix-it of I'm gonna be I'm gonna feel good in the future, it was very important for me to realize that the things that I'm fighting for aren't necessarily going to feel good. And that is something that also was quite hard for me to get into my brain, because I feel like we all have this kind of subconscious programming of the things that you love, the things that you fight for, the meaning, the purpose, it's all going to feel good. And I realized that for me was quite the opposite, that a lot of the times the things that I wanted to fight for felt really, really uncomfortable. And there was a lot of fear in when it came to doing those things. And because I felt like somehow meaning and really profound purpose came from a future in which I felt good and there was no pain and there was no illness. But actually, I came to realize that the things that I wanted to fight for actually had illness and had pain and had suffering and had all of these things. And these things are what gave it meaning. And it was really hard to stop thinking of what I want to fight for, or the life that I love, as something that felt good. And that I felt just calm and peaceful and everything's good, and really and truly embody the fact that these things that I want to fight for and that I care about and that the things that I want to give to the world aren't necessarily going to feel good. And a lot of times they don't feel good, they feel uncomfortable, and they make me feel really scared, really afraid, terrified even. But those are still the things that we need to go towards in order to get to the place where we want to be at and be part of our lives and be the people that we want to be. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's hard to make that shift, but it is very real and very true. And that is something that you can do right now. You don't have to go to any future in which everything's perfect and good. You can give something of yourself right now. And when you give something of yourself right now, just know that it's not going to feel calm and peaceful and just really chill. It's going to feel scary and uncomfortable, but you still gotta do it, because that's what's going to give your life meaning. And that's what you're giving to the world. That's how you can give something to the world and to people. And that's how you're gonna be proud of your life and make yourself proud and live the life you love, really.
You've described the realization that the wholeness that we seek is not from feeling well and having that perfect life later. The wholeness is that in our messy humanity, in our brokenness, in the flaws, in the suffering even, we have something to offer to our family, to our friends, to our children right now, to ourselves today. Like, you can live a life that has meaning, that has value today. And that is what I find actually rewires our brain and our nervous system and our inner psyche, that in this moment, even though I feel imperfect, I just did something that matters to me and that I love, and that is going to help somebody else maybe. And something magical happens. That's when transformation happens. That's when our humanity and our divinity start to become one. And a deep, actually, over time, as you do these things, as you show up for yourself, for your life, in your imperfect state, there's a deep relaxation in your nervous system that's like, I am letting my light shine today, like in this imperfect way. And there's a calm that will start to, ironically, even though it's difficult, there's an inner, maybe calm isn't the right word, an inner certainty that starts to be wired in. And in that certainty, the autonomic nervous system over time just starts to, a breath, if you will, starts to happen. That I find when people like you make the shift into, even though I have chronic illness today, I am going to align into my truth and do things that matter today and again and again. And you start having a life of wholeness and satisfaction, ironically.
Yes.
Satisfaction. And then what happens is this self-respect starts to drop in. Like, I'm a worthy, valuable person in my life, in my family and society. And that is the healing. That is the healing, because chronic illness often is a result of just a deep sense of not okayness, a deep sense of like, I'm broken and flawed, and I need to like, first of all, we end up being perfectionists, overachievers, trying to fix and control things. And we realize we don't have to have any of those things fixed to have a value to offer to the world. And that's the conscious leap. That's the vibration I'm trying to teach in Primal Trust. Like, yes, I have the tools and you could go through them in that rigid way, but there's ultimately a transmission here. So from your words, what would you say the Primal Trust Academy community is like? What is that vibration if you were to sum it up?
Well, I think that, like I said before, a lot of the times these neuroplasticity programs, they kind of tell us that in order to heal, we have to feel good and calm and everything's just going to be peaceful and you feel good. But the reason you're not healing is because of the suffering. And I think that the thing with Primal Trust is that it's just changing that mindset into the reason that I'm not healing. The reason I'm not healing is not the fact that I'm still suffering. You can still heal even if you suffer. The reason you're not healing is because within that suffering, there's not that sense of primal trust. There's not that sense of okayness, and we're running away from it. And I think that that it's really important for people to understand that you're not still ill because you're suffering. You're still ill because within that suffering, you don't have any primal trust and okayness within that suffering, and you're still running from it. And if you can develop that primal trust, you can heal even if you're suffering. And I think that's just really important to get our minds around. Yeah. And I think that just the Primal Trust community, just Dr. Kat's community, it's really wonderful in just giving you that primal trust vibration of okayness, of you can suffer and still be okay. You can have depression and you can have illness and still be okay and still give something to the world. And especially just the fact that suffering is not the enemy. It's the lack of primal trust that is getting us in this kind of icky chronic illness place in the first place. Yeah.
I love that. Suffering is not the enemy. It's the lack of primal trust that feels icky. It's the lack of
yes. You can still heal even if you suffer.
Yeah.
Like that's the opposite thing that your neuroplasticity programs tell you. It's like, it's okay. And it's also, and it's a way your life's going to have deep meaning.
Yeah.
If you right now, even if you're suffering, you put yourself out there and you give something. Because I think that's kind of why chronically ill people are so sad, because they tell you in order to give something to the world, you need to heal. That's what you need to do. And no, you don't need to heal to be able to give something. And even if you don't have a chronic illness, you don't need to fix your depression. You don't have to feel good. You don't have to be rich or whatever to be here for the world right now and give something that you're proud of within that suffering, with that primal trust.
Yeah. I think I love this. And a lot of people, this is going to be a real like mind spin. They're like, what? How can I? No, you don't understand. I can't be okay with this pain, this symptom, this infection, this whatever. And I'm telling you, and so is Cristina, you don't understand. Like that is your anecdote of deep in your psyche that even though I have this symptom, I am okay enough to live. It is going to be a spin to your ego, and your ego is going to scream and be like, no, I want it gone before I live. It's the irony. And what I see happen in my community is this, like they start getting this conscious rearrangement. And over time, they're like, oh, I forgot to think about my symptoms, but they were there when I was teaching that class. Now that I think about it, but I didn't notice it because I'm not thinking about the suffering anymore because my psyche is now focused on living. And then over time, as you stop thinking about it, because you're actually focused on you, on giving your value, the need for your symptoms to be the reminder that you're not okay loses its need to be there. And the irony is that you do start to heal, to transform in the living of and using all the tools, the same neuroplasticity tools, we just use them differently here.
Yes, like the enemy is also not the neuroplasticity, it's neuroplasticity itself or the tools, it's how you use them, what's your motivation behind using them. Are you trying to run away from pain, suffering, and symptoms and illness? Or are you doing it out of the fact that you want to give something? Because it's not the same thing to do something. Like, for example, let's say heal. It's one thing to heal because you think it's going to make your life better and it's going to make you feel good. And another completely different thing is to heal because you think that that's going to allow you to give something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely different. So that you heal so that you can give something, not so that it makes your life better. It makes you feel better, because it's not going to make you feel better. You're going to feel just as miserable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I see people, maybe sometimes they'll do neuroplasticity and their symptoms will calm down, but their underlying feeling of satisfaction about their life is exactly the same. They're still not happy.
Exactly. That's why, like, literally, like when I was doing like new DNRS, I understood, and it was kind of depressing at that point. But I had this sense of, because there was this question in DNRS, which was like, why do you want to heal? And I realized I don't want to heal. I'm gonna be just as miserable if I heal. Like, that is not the problem. And I realized that I fundamentally didn't want to heal because I knew that even if I healed, that I still wouldn't have that deep satisfaction for life that I really wanted and desired, and that would give my life meaning.
Yeah.
So that's why at the beginning I just couldn't do anything to try to heal myself, because I really didn't care about that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that you've hit the nail on the head, and like your underlying illness, if you will, was a deep dissatisfaction with life.
Yes.
And that if your symptoms were to go away, your drive to actually resolve that underlying conflict would go away. And your higher consciousness realized just getting rid of these symptoms is not going to fix your underlying, what was the setup in the first place, and took you on a different path. And that was the same for me. I spent well over a decade, and my higher wisdom would not let those things heal me because I wasn't addressing my underlying sense of my life.
And that's really interesting, because that's actually, like, for me, I'm deeply spiritual, right? But I do think that ultimately that's the role of illness. The role of illness, it's kind of like there's two paths, and you make it, and for your whole life you just try really hard to go into this one path, but life wants you to take you into another path, and it keeps putting obstacles in your way, like depression, chronic illness, loss, and it does everything so that you can get into this other path, and this other path is what's going to give you that deep satisfaction and meaning. So, like, sometimes I wondered, like, why me, like, why all of those things happened in my life, because the people around me aren't suffering as much as I am suffering, or that's how I see it anyway. So, and at some point I kind of realized that life puts you that suffering, that depression, that really deep sense of insatisfaction, that illness, it puts those things there as because you need that agony, that dark night of the soul, that you need that pain, that amount of pain and suffering, so that you have this leverage, that motivation to go into the other path that you need to go into, so that you can have that deep satisfaction in life. And so there is a reason all of these things are happening to you. They're happening for you. You just don't see it yet. But there is a reason for them, and that kind of gave me like this deep sense of peace. So this is like, I am not a victim to this. This is here so that this huge amount of suffering is the motivation that I need to go into this other path, because this other path is really scary. And that's why we need so much pain as motivation to go into this other path, because it's terrifying. But we need that pain in order to take that leap of faith into the thing that is terrifying for us. So it really does serve a purpose.
Yeah, I see that. And, just yesterday I was teaching my last class of the mentorship, where I taught about this hero's journey that we are on, and that we have a disruption in our life, like the chronic illness, to take us down to face our inner dragons, our inner deep wounding that maybe no one in your family line has been able to face. You develop the tools, you have the community and the mentor, and we're here to really get at the deep wounding in not just your body, but in your psyche and in your soul. And now you're able to face it. And as you can face it, you start living with it. And in the living, you end up emerging out of it. And it's a very counterintuitive way that your ego does not want to take. And yet you're called, and you've really described, we only have a couple more minutes, but you really described so well, Cristina, taking the choice of going on that hero's journey and saying, okay, I'm going to stop obsessing with fixing this illness, and I'm going to start using these tools to discover me and to unravel the inner wounding and start living and giving today. And the reason why I want to heal is that today I want to be able to give a little more of me, and I can have that today. I don't need to wait till I'm healed to do it.
Mhm.
And, here we are interviewing you where you are giving, you're giving people an example of the journey of choice. Like you really just explained the choice of, am I going to do this to fix myself, or am I going to do this for another reason? And I really applaud you for making that courageous choice. And you're right here in the middle of it. And I can't wait to interview you again in the coming months and seeing how that choice is changing your life. So thank you for being with us. Any closing words? We've got about 1 more minute.
I guess just saying that this whole illness thing, this whole suffering thing is going to push you to your limit, but there's a reason for it. And that pushing you to your limit is going to end up taking you into a really beautiful place, into a really beautiful life that is going to have suffering and pain and maybe even illness, but it's going to also have deep meaning and satisfaction, and that love for life that you feel like you've lost. Like you haven't lost it because of your illness, and you haven't lost it because of your suffering. You've lost it because of that lack of primal trust, of being okay with it, rather than running away from those things that we consider are bad. Those are the things that we can give to the world. Those are the things that allow us to give something to the world. Like people don't do amazing things because they're feeling good and they're on a roll and they're just feeling really awesome. Those great things, they come out of suffering and illness and pain, and that is something that you can do right now. You don't have to wait to some pretty perfect future. You can do it right now, and that is something that you're capable of doing. And even if it pushes you to your limit, there is a reason it's doing that, and it's going to end up taking you to a really beautiful place and to a life that you're really proud of and that you're going to love the hell out of.
Yes. And in that loving the hell out of your life, that's when illness has served its purpose. And I see it over and over again. It just starts to fall away.
It will go away.
Definitely. It will go away.
I have no doubt.
And that's Primal Trust was carved out of that suffering, the whole thing. And look at it now. And, I'm thriving. And 5 years ago, I was completely bedbound. So thank you, Cristina, for sharing your transmission and your message. And I hope that this inspires many of you to take the choice to find your primal trust in the process. So thank you.